Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the City of Opalocka Downtown Revitalization and Master Plan Forum, also known as the Downtown Development Forum. My name is Gregory Gay. I am the Director of Planning and Community Development and the CRA Manager for the City of Opalocka. And we'd like to welcome you to this particular forum. We have a wealth of information that we would like to present to the community abroad. And we have the members of our CRA board and CRA staff and the city attorney who are a part of this particular exercise. Before we get started, I believe there's a statement that needs to be read by the city attorney as it relates to the format for this particular forum.
Pursuant to Resolution 21-9835 passed by the City Commission on January 27, 2021, the City of Opalocka may conduct certain public meetings without having a quorum of its members present physically or at any specific location, and utilizing communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.545B2 of the Florida statutes. The members of this meeting are Board Member Burke, Board Member Davis, Board Member Paget, and Chair Russell. An opportunity was given to the public to address the City Community Redevelopment Agency Board by sending an email to the CRA clerk at crapubliccomments@opalockafl.gov. The clerk will announce all public comments at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Next, we will have, due to the fact that this is a forum, we don't necessarily need to take attendance, but as it's been already stated by the city attorney, we do have the chairwoman of the CRA board, Jamie Russell. We have board member Alvin Burke, board member Chris Davis, and board member Matthew Paget as a part of this particular forum. So we'd like to thank them for being a part of this particular forum activity. Next, we'll have the greetings and open prayer by our staff member, Gerald Lee.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. As Mr. Gay said, we are ready to provide a wealth of information, and we're excited about the progress that we're about to begin to address the things that need to be addressed to improve the city. And so with that said, we're excited, but we also need feedback from the board based on the information that's given. So the discussion part that comes at the end will be vital for us to be able to make and adjust to changes based on your recommendations, based on your support, and based on ideas that you may even come up with as we do this venture. With that being said, I need to move to have prayer so we can begin this meeting and get going with the business of the city. Our Father and our God, we thank you for your goodness and your mercy to us, God, and we ask you, Lord, to look on the activity that we have planned for today. And we ask you, Lord, to give us grace, to give us understanding, and to help us work well together with your wisdom to do the business of the city for the citizens of the city of Opalocka. This we ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen, amen. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for those words of inspiration. And as I would go through and introduce the staff, Mr. Lee has been a stalwart leader within our community, within our department. He is also in working with the CRA, he is the zoning administrator for the city of Walkable. So he's the one that provides some necessary zoning information. We also have on our staff, Mr. Corey Delane, who is our city planner, also working as the project manager for this particular downtown development project. And last but certainly not least, and very vital to our operation, is Miss Kashanta Hall, who is our executive administrator and also serves as the clerk for the CRA. So we like to just acknowledge them. Uh, we have with us also as a part of this exercise, Stantec Consulting, who is the team that is basically looking at our downtown area and looking at the opportunities to create this master plan to give some directions as it relates to what the future holds for redevelopment within the downtown area of the city of Opalocka. So they will be announced at the appropriate times. What I'd like to do now is to have Mr. Corey Delane, who is our project manager for the downtown project, to give a presentation and go over the overview of our downtown area. So Mr. Delane, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. Corey Delane, City Planner, and CRA Planner. It's a pleasure to have everyone here today for this forum as we look to improve our downtown core to make it a more vibrant area for the betterment of our community. Before I start my presentation, I would actually like to open the floor to Chairwoman Russell. She would like to provide some words of leadership, as she has been the leader and of this CRA board, and we would like to open the floor if she had a couple of words.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Delane, to staff and all of us that are on the meeting today. I look forward to a productive workshop, and that the planning that we put together will help move this city in a positive direction in which it's already going. So thank you to everyone. I know it's spring break and everybody have plans and busy. So to take time out of your busy schedule, it's a bit much, but as you can hear in the background, I have some little people here that's running around too. So let's be productive today. Let's get a lot accomplished and move forward. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. With that being said, I will share my screen and start my presentation. Can everyone see the presentation? All right.
Yes.
Yes, we can see it.
No problem. All right, so brief backdrop. Opalocka was founded in 1926, and it was actually the second city to be developed by aviation pioneer Glenn Curtis after Hialeah and prior to the creation of Miami Springs. Currently, the city of Opalocka has the largest collection of Moorish revival architecture in the Western Hemisphere. A little bit of backstory behind it: during the World War II era and through the 1960s, the downtown area, as you see from the pictures to the right, was a once thriving economy that had restaurants, shops, stores, bars, bakeries, you name it, it pretty much had it here. And all of these services were basically provided due to the fact that immediately to the west of downtown Opalocka is the Opalocka Airport, which at the time was a military base, and that the downtown was pretty much supportive of the activity that occurred at the airport. At current, the downtown is primarily in the three parts, primarily a multi-family residential area to the west, which is known as the barracks. To the north, we have the single family area with the elementary school to the east, and in the middle is the commercial and institutional downtown core. Back to the brief history, due to the closure of that military base, as we previously mentioned, a lot of the industry that was once here, a lot of the business that were once here basically shuttered, as a lot of the activity at the airport left, a lot of the industry left, therefore leaving, Opalocka pretty much a vacant shell for, commerce. So a lot of that activity was no longer here at the turn of the 1960s and 1970s. Presently, none of the previous tenants that owned, the restaurants and stores and bars, they're no longer here. But the purpose of this conversation today is to be able to reimagine what that area once looked like and to be able to bring some semblance of a vibrant, active downtown back to this area. To the left is a list of the current occupants of downtown. We have our city hall, the La Graja grocery store, a couple of health clinics. We have the Opalocka CDC building to the southeast of City Hall. The Opalocka train station, historic train station is here. We have the State of Florida Municipal Services building, a few mom and pop stores, the library, barbershop, churches. Here is a list of challenges that we're currently facing. A lot of the commercial businesses are in average to dilapidated conditions, the decaying facades. There's some design aesthetics that, wouldn't particularly be inviting for most communities. Street work needs to be, improved on to make it a more inviting and more engaging atmosphere. There's limited services in the downtown, as well as no entertainment or recreational activities. And the downtown core doesn't receive the traffic volume that's high enough to support a thriving commercial zone. However, due to our proximity to the 27th Avenue, we've had a rider count of 100,000 plus riders that pass through the city each and every day. If there is a way that we can, create something down in the downtown that's pretty much a draw, one of our main goals is to be able to siphon some of that traffic that's coming off 27, coming off 37, even 95 in the Gratney, to come and actually stop in downtown Opalocka as opposed to just passing by and not even seeing it. This is a list of things that we put together that shows, the type of activities we like to see, the densities that are allowed, being able to provide for certain commercial activities, allowing for relaxation for things like alcohol sales, entertainment, working with the noise ordinance. So not only would it be able to allow for certain activities, but making sure it's in perfect harmony with the community. These are things that will be discussed in the interim to be able to accomplish the goals that we have for creating a vibrant downtown. And here's the goals for us for revitalization. Is the main and overall theme is to create a vibrant mixed use area in downtown as a regional destination, providing ample shopping and services within walking distance to the residential neighborhoods surrounding downtown, establish high quality mixed use transit oriented development, ensuring the downtown has a full range of multimodal transportation options, improve the visible quality of built environment, thus increasing the tax base through creating new development and maximizing economic opportunities for current and future residents through job creation, fostering existing and attracting new businesses and industries. And with that, that ends my presentation. And I'm glad that we were able to present this information to you all to give you some kind of sense of where we are and where we would like to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Delane. And as you can see, there is a lot that Opalocka has done in the past. It has served as a support system to the North Central Dade community with the airport and other amenities that are nearby. Opalocka does offer a lot of opportunities as it relates to job development, as well as opportunities for residential development. As we've said through this particular process, this is a workshop to focus more so on the downtown area. And by looking at the downtown area, it may not be along a major corridor, but there are several communities within the South Dade area overall, within Dade County overall, that are not necessarily communities that have main roads passing through them. I think of communities like our sister city, Miami Springs, which is actually not on a major corridor, but has a corridor that connects to a major corridor off of Okeechobee Road, founded by Glenn Curtis. Another community that's even older than those particular communities is a community called Coconut Grove. Coconut Grove is a community that's in the southern portion of the city of Miami. And actually, there's some controversy whether the Coconut Grove area was founded first or the city of Miami was founded first. So that goes back and forth. But there is no major corridor other than South Bayshore Drive, which is more of a local commuter road. The next major highway that basically is adjacent to Coconut Grove is US 1. So there is another community that does not have a major highway going through that particular area. So there are a lot of similarities with these other communities that are also thriving, and we would like to take advantage of that. The next thing we're going to be speaking on as part of the agenda is looking at what the potential is as it relates to what the downtown area has to offer. And to speak on that, I'm going to have our zoning administrator and Mr. Gerald Lee to kind of speak on what downtown Opalocka has to offer. Mr. Lee, the floor is yours. You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. This is something that's continually being rehearsed. The potential of the city, the opportunities of the city, and we've put it into about 5 categories. But this information has been bantered about for a long time, and what we're expectant of and hopeful in is that for once we can move closer to making some real things happen in the city based on this potential. The potentials that we're talking about, the city of Opalocka.
Let me get my phone. It's breaking up.
Member Burke, did you leave? You okay? Hello?
We're good.
Okay.
No, I'm here, Mr. Gay.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. As it relates to location, the city of Opalocka is centrally located in the north area of Miami-Dade County. And so that location sets up for it being a great place to do the things that the planning and zoning ordinances that have already been put in place can take advantage of to improve the city. Location stretches from just the geographic area to what it's centrally located to. The city of Opalocka is proximal to an airport to allow for businesses that could be here and people who could live here to have access to an airport, either to get their goods and services moved for e-commerce kinds of opportunities and for freight movement for businesses. And if you have businesses that are using the airport to do their business, then that becomes great places for people to work and to earn their income, and they wouldn't have to travel great distances. The other part that location provides in this situation is its proximity to major thoroughfares, that if you have a business that instead of moving those Dugars through air freight kind of opportunities, if you were going to do it over the road, you would have access to major thoroughfares that are proximal to the city of Opalocka, those being I-75, I-95, the Golden Glades interchange to lead you to the turnpike and other means of travel. Those opportunities are going to be beneficial to business. And then if you're a commuter to a job, you can easily move yourself from your place of residence to your work location quickly and easily without being stuck in major traffic necessarily. The last part of the potentials of the city of Opalocka is there has been zoning changes and ordinances that have been adopted to allow for commercial mixed use, where you would have opportunities to not only bring more people to the city, but to provide more services in a mixed use venue. Those potential opportunities for both residential and commercial development and opportunities for businesses to thrive with access to major thoroughfares and an airport and major highways allows for better improvement and better opportunities for those businesses to thrive and the residents to have their needs better accommodated with new housing that could also be built. Lastly, I want to say that there is a potential of having businesses that are here have an opportunity to reach out to commuters who are passing through the city on a regular basis. Our count is approximately 150,000 commuters go through the city of Opalocka. And if the businesses that are relocating and the opportunities that should be presented, if they can garner 10% of that group, 10% of those potential commuters, to let them be people who are stopping here for the businesses that come, they would have opportunities to have a captured audience. A captured audience reach out and find services in the city of Opalocka from the businesses that have relocated because of that potential. What I'm expectant of is through the presentations that are coming, that we take advantage of these potentials by the development that can be actually accomplished if we follow through. That's all that I have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And as you can see by his presentation, Mr. Lee brings a wealth of institutional knowledge to what is a part of this particular process. He is one of the main persons that is involved in the interpretation of our zoning code, and he has extensive experience in assisting in the development opportunities that are forthcoming within our area. So we appreciate him in making that particular presentation and kind of bringing things down to the ground level for what we're looking to focus on for future development opportunities in our downtown area. I'm going to take a little break here because I'd like to know if there may be some questions that people may have as it relates to some of the information that has been presented thus far. If you don't have any questions, we will be moving on to the purpose of this downtown Opalocka revitalization workshop. So that would be the next item on the agenda. If there are no questions, next we will have Mr. Delane speak on.
Hold on, Mr. Gay.
Mr. Gay, I think there are some people that have questions, but also before you go forward, I'd just like to make an announcement that a board member, Titus, did call and say that she would not be on the call, but she would try to get on later. She had another appointment.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
I think board member Davis.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair to Mr. Gay, I just had a question as relates to, I guess, the impact fees and looking at ways to link job to housing. Currently in our, I guess in our current impact fee structure, do we assess impact fees to commercial developments with set asides geared towards supporting, I guess, affordable housing projects?
Through the chair, as it relates to that particular question related to impact fees are basically geared, as they are right now, are geared toward four major elements within the city. Those elements are related to residential development as it relates to opportunities. It relates to our water and sewer. It relates to road improvements, public safety, and the other one just escapes
Parks.
this moment. Parks and recreation. Thank you.
Mhm.
Those are the ones that our impact fees are basically focused on at this time. As it relates to impact fees for strictly for residential development or promoting residential development, there is no legislation that is in place right now to basically identify funding to assist in those particular type of development. But as it relates to the Community Redevelopment Agency, one of the goals and objectives is to look at opportunities for utilizing the tax increment financing funds that are being collected over a period of time, and seeing how those funds can also be utilized to assist with residential development. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about as it relates to incentives for development within the CRA. That is an area that we're going to be talking about a little bit more further down on the agenda in I believe, Section 8, talking to the city's future. So we could probably have a very robust discussion revolving around that particular area, along with some of the other ideas revolving around what the city's future is.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Gay. And the reason I brought it up is because in the spirit of, the downtown concept plan and looking at ways to leverage opportunities at one of our most, in my opinion, one of our most areas of growth, which is the Opalocka Airport. It seems to be, we know that, commercial projects are in the pipeline, and, we really didn't get an opportunity to see the type of growth and expansion as far as economics are concerned with the Amazon development. So just kind of forward thinking and looking at those development opportunities, I would, if legislation needs to be put forth to put something like that in place, I would be more than willing to sponsor it. But I won't dive too deep in it because I know it's down on the agenda. So I'll just wait till we get to that point. But thank you, Mr. Young.
All right, and I really appreciate you asking that particular question. That's really part of the impetus of why we wanted to have this particular downtown master plan and have this particular forum, so that we can have conversations and discuss items and issues such as those, so that we can make sure that they are a part of the plan. So as different developers and different entities express an interest in wanting to do things within our downtown area or in any other portion of the city, we can pretty much let them know these are the items that we are focused on as a part of your redevelopment to occur. So I appreciate that particular question. If there aren't any other questions, we're going to go ahead and have the purpose for this downtown revitalization workshop, and that will be presented by Mr. Delane.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. The purpose of this meeting is actually to, bring all the minds together from both staff, board, the public, as well as consultants on reimagining what the downtown could be, looking at the past and looking at the resources that we have, and being able to bring all that together to the table. One of the things I want to do is to bring light to the recent activities that has taken place, to kind of give a backdrop to, the direction that we're looking at. As recent as I believe it was 2006 or sometime before that, we've had a development for a senior living facility that might have been sooner than that, but we've worked with that property as well as creating a new downtown master plan, which we'll elaborate on later on down in the meeting, as well as working with staff and our consultant to create a new downtown zoning, which would be able to allow for new uses in the downtown that haven't been had for years, and being able to, open the door to new opportunities for new types of development. What we're looking for is to bring in new development in terms of mixed use, which would bring in more entertainment, which would bring more dining experiences, would open the door to, some new energy for this area. With that being said, we're also looking to promote, entities that do events, working with the city and working with the CRA to sponsor on events that would bring some kind of synergy to the area, to bring some exposure to the area. There are a few properties within the downtown that we're looking for new development activity to occur. One in particular is the barracks area, which is a historical part of the town that has had, I wouldn't say as much challenge, but we're looking to recreate that to allow for higher density and to create that critical mass that's necessary for a thriving downtown. Further down in our conversation, we'll also discuss about redevelopment in the CRA, as well as incentives that we're looking to work with our developers coming into the city. We'll be speaking with the board to see, the type of incentives they would like to see, as well as developers that are on the call and our consultant that have, experience in putting together different types of incentive packages to allow for new development and new uses to occur that create the vibrant activity that we're looking to promote. With all that being said, I believe now we would like to actually open the floor to our consultant, which has been working hand in hand with CRA staff to create a downtown master plan to reimagine what downtown could be. And we're actually really excited. We've worked with this group for about 6 months, I believe, and we're looking forward to hear what their findings are. So without any further ado, I would like to present Mr. Jarrett Beck and Mr. David Dixon, who are our consultants with Stantec. Mr. Nelson, if you'd be able to allow them in, that would be great.
Excuse me, Mr. DeLong, before we get to them, can I ask a question, please?
Not a problem.
Okay, in the past, what I would like to know is, and anything that we do, we are considering the parking aspect of anything that we do, aren't we?
Yes, so part of the downtown master plan study is including a parking study. And with that, we want to be able to create a critical mass to where we would actually create a parking problem. And I say that not to say that the parking problem is a negative thing, but to be able to allow for additional revenue per se to be added from that. If you notice other communities that have, a downtown, I would use Hollywood as an example. For years, they never used to charge for their parking. However, over time, as new development came online and new business came online, you start to see more synergy and more traffic. And once you start seeing that parking problem was created, so now they need to create parking lots, they need to create parking garages. So what we will be discussing, one of the incentive packages that I've noticed that has occurred there is new developers want to come in, but they want to reduce their parking on the site. However, what the trade-off would be is the city will work in partnership with the CRA and the downtown agency to create an escrow account to where instead of paying the full price for all of the parking on the site, they would pay a percentage of that into an escrow account that would then in turn go into a shared parking complex with a slew of other developments in that area. That way they would accomplish, providing additional parking for the entirety of the area. and that would help the developers actually build their development and help the city achieve, you know, ample parking for the commerce that would be coming online soon.
And if I
Okay,
could just piggyback off of Mr. Delaney's statement before we get into presentation by Stantec, that's a very good question. We do have to take in consideration that our downtown area is known as
Mr. Gay, you hit mute.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can't hear him.
Mr. Gay?
Mr. Gay, your volume went down.
Yeah.
Maybe try logging out and logging back in.
He's still talking, but I can't hear him.
All right, while we're waiting on Mr. Gay to get rid of his technical difficulties, Mr. Delane, you want to continue?
Well, yeah, just being able to provide Board Member Burke kind of some insight to, you know, we have taken in consideration the parking. We're working with Stantec on our parking analysis to look at the parking opportunities that we do have currently. And with the inclusion of critical mass, with the inclusion of new commercial businesses, new residential activities, you know, showing once we reach a certain number, how much parking is necessary. And once we get that number, then we could decide, okay, where can we orient that and how we can work with developers, say they want to, you know, and most of them will ask for a reduction in parking. You know, how can we accomplish providing for parking for all the developments in the surrounding area, but being able to work with developers to create a centralized depository of funding where the city, CRA, and the developers can all put all their monies in the same pot to create, you know, this parking depository, for lack of a better phrase, to be able to allow for additional parking resources in downtown. Mr. Gay, is your mic back online? I think not.
No.
I'm gonna go by and see Mr. Gay now.
Yeah.
Okay.
But thank you for that, Mr. DeLong, because in the past, we have continued to build things in the city without looking at parking.
Yes.
And if we're gonna redevelop downtown, and like I say, like you were saying earlier, you know, it can be a moneymaker. City of Hollywood, you know, off-street parking is one of their biggest assets now. So, you know, I just would like to keep parking in mind as we're going forward. Thank you very much.
Of course, and noticing that we've had, you know, a couple of developments in the downtown that has essentially, you know, created the negative parking problem. That's been a huge thing for us to be able to accommodate, you know, new development coming in and not create pretty much a headache for the commission moving forward, to allow for, you know, additional services for our residents. That way it's not so much of a hardship on our community. So we have taken that into consideration, and we're definitely moving forward to being able to allow for some kind of resolution to that issue.
I have to go and jiggle it.
Thank you, sir.
Of course.
Hold on, let me, I just jiggled it, so let me see if you hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I just had to jiggle the cords a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, IT, for helping me out.
Don't see you.
Okay, yeah, I'm back online. I just have to jiggle the lines a little bit. Sometimes they get a little cross. I concur with everything that's been stated as far as with Mr. Delane, but we do have to take in consideration that our downtown area is also a transit-oriented district, which there are some opportunities for parking reductions related to development. But as Mr. Delane has expressed, you know, the communities that have the greatest amount of commerce and business that are taking place also have a parking problem. And it's like taking the bad along with the good. So you want to have a parking problem within your community, because if you have a parking problem, that means that the businesses are successful, everybody's making money, and people have looked upon your community as a desired community that they want to frequent in some way, shape, or form. So with that being said, Jared, David, I think the mic can be turned over to you guys and you can move forward with your presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Gay, before we move on to them, we want to acknowledge that board member Taylor is now on board as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Thank you, Ms. Hall.
All right, well, with that, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for letting us participate in your annual downtown forum. What I'm going to do is share my screen with you and kind of go through a presentation that some of which will be a repeat to the CRA board, some of it will be new. And to those of you that are participating as developers, this will be, of course, what you're seeing for the first time. So let me make sure I'm getting this properly. So does everyone see a beautiful background? All right, perfect. Well, now I know I'm already off to a good start. So what we'll cover.
Excuse me, one more. I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but also Ms. Hall acknowledged that board member Williams is also on the line.
All right, perfect. Well, with that, and I'm just going to touch briefly on the project team, and we stress all. My name is Jared Beck, and I am an urban planner and a project manager here with Stantec. I'm joined, as Mr. Gay had announced, by David Dixon, who's a principal with Stantec and the principal in charge of this project. We may also have on the call today 2 more folks from our project team. Jim Karras from Karras Community Investments, and Jim has been the one responsible with developing the market analysis, and then also Ebony Crispin from the Idea Inc. And Ebony is working with us on really helping develop strategy and implementation. But more importantly, as we talk about this project team and all of us, it's not just Stantec developing with our overall partners a master plan, and it's not going to be the city after we're finished and implementing it. It really does include you all who are developers. One of the things that's really important to us, it's important to the city, is that this master plan, when it's done, is something that is realized. And so a part of the conversation today is going to be helping to bridge that gap. Now, as we go through the next couple minutes, a couple of things that we'll really talk on today will be a little bit about post-COVID-19. We know that the last year in our lives has been changed by this. And so we're going to take another look at what does that mean in terms of urban development, where we're going in the future. We'll also look more at the trends, things that are happening on the national level that will impact all of us in some way as we move through the next 2 decades in particular. We're going to look at some of the potential areas for change, which the CRA board has seen, and then also the preliminary market analysis in terms of where we're at in the potential growth in Opalocka. More importantly, though, what we want to have and be prepared, this will hopefully be a good discussion as we go through. We are going to ask questions. We want to know from you all who are developers, how do we bridge the gap? How do we take a plan and the city's initiative and efforts to then make it such that you as the private entities want to invest in Opalocka and help bring this plan to fruition? So just a quick recap before I put David on the stage here. The downtown area, I think probably most of you are familiar with, but we've outlined it, really focusing on the historic core of downtown Opalocka, and includes roughly about 160 acres north of Alibaba Avenue. And then we're bordered on the west by Northwest 37. by Northwest 27th on the east, and then more towards the north, historic City Hall. So with that, I'm going to ask David to step in for a minute.
Okay, can you all hear me? All right. So I want to add my thanks to Jared for inviting us to participate with all of you in this. I will note that in the old days, it was the old guys like me who got dressed up and not our younger colleagues, but times have changed. So what I'm going to talk about is going to be very consistent with what all the previous speakers from Opalocka have talked about. And we'll start with what we've heard. And we've heard this not just from the folks you've listened to today, but a broad cross-section of folks in Opalocka, a downtown that is vibrant and active. And we're going to talk more about that because that has actually more meaning today than it's probably had for the last 50 years in terms of a community success. A real focus on locally owned small businesses. And I don't think there's been a time in my very long professional lifetime where the uniqueness of locally owned businesses has created as much value in its own right as today. A place that's authentic, that isn't about the rest of South Florida, but the unique living culture of Opalocka, which is of real appeal to lots of folks. A place that celebrates its diversity, and something that we really appreciate and value. Everyone has stressed to us, create a plan that's achievable. And that means, you know, as Mr. Delane said, put our TIF dollars to work and tell us how to realistically evaluate, or help us, they actually think really know, the development proposals brought before us so we can really make them real and achievable. Next, please. So we are all coming out of, well, we hope we are coming out of a worldwide pandemic, and it has made some changes. And you're probably all living these changes, so please don't feel I'm lecturing you, but this is to sort of get us all on the same page. We are witnessing an acceleration of the decline in auto-oriented, mass market retail, suburban office parks that's actually been going on across the country for, really started about 20 years ago and has accelerated. Really interesting, if you look at urban, before COVID, urban office rents compared to suburban office rents, and then look back 20 years, urban rents have risen much faster, virtually every region than suburban rents, for example. And a really strong increase in walkable access across the board to nature, to an Opalocka Boulevard lined with outdoor dining, ways that allow us to experience community in our local neighborhoods, in our local community within walking distance. And a community like Opalocka with a really strong living culture is really well placed. And I think many of us have discovered how much we love community and how our urban neighborhoods, and by that I mean the neighborhoods of Opalocka, and particularly in and around downtown, become small towns. People show films on a Friday night, and the neighbors gather as we learned how to adjust to social distancing and to the realities of a pandemic. Next, please. But there are fundamental things that have not changed. One is the fundamental nature of economic and demographic and technological change. We are living in a period in which all these changes are accelerating, and they have very profound implications for how we develop our communities. I'm going to go back to this in a couple of minutes in a little more detail, but basically these trends are fundamentally pro-urban, and by urban, I don't just mean downtown Miami, but places like Opalocka, suburbs that are creating more urban boulevards, smaller cities. It's not all the dollars, attention, and talent is going just to the core of major cities today, but it is coming to walkable places that offer a lively sense of community. Knowledge and innovation industries are maybe not so much turning away from cities as they are also coming to any place where talent wants to be, where there are creative folks, educated folks, these jobs are going. And today, Opalocka, and I think it has an airport, is certainly helpful in this way, has as much claim to these as anywhere else. It has not slowed in interest in any way in Main Street, in walkable, lively streets, places that are the heart of our community. So what lessons, how do we begin to apply these lessons? One thing I want to emphasize is there has been a lot of press about how, we're all heading to suburbia these days. And in fact, that literally is not true. It has been true of a couple of cities like New York and San Francisco, where the fact that folks can work remotely means that they don't feel they are tethered to their jobs and have to pay a lot of rent or a lot for a small place to live. Those folks have moved away, have moved further out, looked for other housing opportunities, often in other urban places, actually. But in fact, if you look at housing prices across the US, urban prices, city prices, Opalocka prices have risen faster than sort of traditional single-family suburbs or rural areas, February 2020 to February 2021. What COVID-19 has correlated with is not density, but poverty. And that it's shown a harsher light on our need to create a more equitable society. So let's talk about the new norm as we move forward in the next 20 years and the implications for Opalocka. And this again will, I think, ring much of what my colleagues have talked about will ring true. Next, please. So first of all, I call this the Walkable Imperative. Most of the net new jobs in our society, why don't you go to the next slide, in our economy today, start with the knowledge industries, innovation companies. Actually, a majority of jobs in manufacturing companies, this is the first time in our history today, require some form of, at least some college education, and pretty soon it'll be 4 years. There's a definite trend going. But it doesn't just mean that only these high-skilled workers who are in short supply. We have a worldwide shortage of educated workers because all the growth in our jobs is coming from knowledge industries. But even for folks with other skills, each new knowledge job actually creates a number of other jobs, brings a number of other jobs to a community. The city of Buffalo estimates that each new knowledge industry job creates 5 jobs for other folks. So creating a lively, walkable place, next please, which is where this talent wants to be. This is what the world looks like. Yes, talent, where they want to live, this is what it looks like. There's a great place to hang out with friends. They're not necessarily looking for a single family house. It's walkable. It could very well be the center of downtown Opalocka. When these folks arrive, they create a number of jobs for other kinds of folks. And that's really important to remember. So next, please. So we now know where's our economy going. What does it take to attract jobs and therefore talent and therefore jobs and investment and jobs for everyone? It takes a great environment. It takes the kind of lively, vibrant downtown that Opalocka seeks to pursue and is well positioned to create. So why is it well positioned, and particularly going forward? Next, please. Our demographics have been changing dramatically. This really became visible after 2008. But basically, let's just skip to the next. I won't linger on bad news. If you looked at how we're growing, before 2010, most of our growth was the gray portion of this circle here. Folks 35 to 65, these are folks who had kids, raised families, bought single family detached houses out in the suburbs, lots of cars, etc. Starting actually before 2010, but going forward 2010, and this should really say 2040. So for the next 20 years, certainly ahead of us, the majority of our growth, more than half will be folks over 65. About the slowest growing group is folks 35 to 65. Next, please. What this means is, while I was a kid, when you turned on television, first of all, everybody was white. There were families full of kids. The grown-ups were all smiling. Kids weren't causing any problems. And only one of those two working adults got paid. The other one stayed home and didn't get paid for working pretty hard. That is not the world we live in today. And let's go skip one more slide. Today, we are as diverse as we can imagine. And 80+% of net new households for the next 20 years will be singles and couples. These are folks without kids. They choose very different places to live than new households did for most of the last 40 or 50 years, when they were basically choosing housing around a place to raise kids. They were looking for backyards. They were looking for schools, et cetera. They were looking for good highway access into a city. That's not what folks are looking for today. These net new households, this is our housing market, net new households. Our housing market is 2/3 of our real estate economy. Where these folks want to go is what happens to our communities, and they want to go to those same walkable, amenitized, fun, community-rich places that the talent wants to go to. So next, please. Now, how does this apply to Opalocka, besides the fact that there, as Jared's going to tell you, a lot of places to accommodate this growth, and they're near downtown and they'll make a difference? Well, earlier I've forgotten who mentioned the proximity to 27th Avenue. I think it was Mr. Gay, but it's great to have lots of folks driving through your community if you have enough of folks living in your community to create a destination to support the retail, the critical mass of local, cool, community-based retail that other folks find interesting and want to stop at and come to and stop at. Well, you can add roughly 1,000 new housing units within a 5, maybe a 10-minute walk of, for instance, Opalocka Boulevard. You can bring it to life. You can bring a block of Main Street, and actually there's already stuff there, so spread out over a couple of blocks, to life. That's not all the support that retail needs, but it's enough to attract the retailers who then draw all those other 27,000 folks a day to come shop, eat a meal, run into friends, decide maybe I'd like to live here, and then take Tri-Rail to work. Next, please. So just to make this more important, I mentioned earlier that the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the decline of other kinds of retail. Today, it is housing within a walking distance that is spurring most of the growth in retail. There's still some growth around auto-oriented places. There are some malls still thriving, majority are not. But as we go forward into the 2020s, it's going to be harder and harder for mass market, auto-oriented retail to survive, because the digital world, Amazon will come land in Opalocka's airport and distribute an awful lot of stuff. But what it cannot compete with is the cool local businesses that the great folks of Opalocka can open, because there are enough people living nearby to make those businesses work. So it is housing and retail that are partners today. And so bringing demographic and economic change together, this is what the future looks like. This is just, I just grabbed this from looking at a bunch of South Florida examples. It can take lots of form. Doesn't need to be denser than this, but it needs to be about this dense to create the foundation for life on the street that then attracts jobs and investment and really unlocks a bright future. And I'm going to get to parking now in part next. As you probably all know, because you hear a lot about it, we are about to go through a period of rapidly changing mobility. I like to use the word paradigms. It's a little bit formal, but that means what's the basic way we move around. So when universal access to cars really got going in the 1950s, it wasn't around before World War II. And, you know, we had cars, we had highways, we were raising big families. Many of us headed to the suburbs, we could afford to. that era is over, but so is the way we move around is also going to be dramatically changed. Over the next 25 years, we're going to go from how we move around primarily, let me know if you can still hear me, to more and more of us using shared mobility, the Lyfts and Ubers of the world, rapidly shifting to, I'm going to call it connected mobility, where our cars talk to each other. That means they can drive 6 inches from each other. It also means they can park 4 inches from each other, which means that over the next, let's say, the US auto fleet turns over every 15 years, meaning we all have, on average, we don't have the same car 15 years from now we have today, just about every case. That means probably within 15 years of today, almost every car will be able to self-park. That means you won't park your car, you'll pull up to the parking lot or garage and say, go park yourself. And believe me, our cars will park themselves a lot more compactly than we will, which means that we're going to be able to fit more and more cars in every parking facility we have. Now, this does not mean that, as I think it was Mr. Lee pointed out, no, not Mr. Lee, Mr. Burke, that we don't need to provide the parking you need today, but it does mean that as we densify, so we add, put it another way, so we add more housing, more restaurants, more fun, more jobs, et cetera, the core of Opalocka, increasingly we won't have to spend a lot of money on parking. So that the biggest disadvantage concentrated development had, the need to spend dollars on structured parking, will begin to go away. By the time we get to the 2040s, we will be in the era of autonomous mobility, probably not so much everybody owning their own autonomous vehicle, but shared autonomous mobility, which means push a button and the kind of vehicle you need right then shows up quickly, takes you where you want to go, and they don't park. Opalocka that will benefit from these changes in lots of ways. Please ask questions if you want to. So jumping ahead.
So I think what we're going to do, David, if you don't object, I see that Jim Karras is with us right now, and I know Jim has some limited time today. So I'd like to go ahead and jump directly into the market data in that I think that Jim will do a much better job of explaining this than either you and I will. And I think this is particularly important for the developers on the call. The board has seen this before, but these numbers are really strong. So Jim, if you're okay, I'm going to go ahead and put you on the seat and jump ahead a little bit. And we're going to move straight into, and I've not changed the order, by the way, you know these, so take your time to look at them, but there shouldn't be any surprises here for you.
Great. I want to make sure that everybody can hear me and see the slide.
Yes.
Or see Jared nodding his head, so that's a good sign. Thank you for having me here with the Stantec team. And I want to share with you some initial findings and preliminary findings of our market analysis as we continue working on this necessary piece of the downtown plan. The context is, of course, Miami-Dade County, and many of the developers in the room understand what is going on from an economic point in Miami-Dade County. Before the pandemic, South Florida, including Miami-Dade County, represents about 1/3 of the state's gross domestic product. So this is, needless to say, an incredibly vibrant and aggressive, if you will, economic engine, not just for the state, but nationally as well, as we rank, Southeast Florida ranks as one of the top metropolitan generators, economic generators in the country. So that provides that 10,000-foot level of very, very positive forecasts in terms of the floor that we're working from. But we're from the pandemic perspective in terms of the impact, and this is obviously changing day to day in terms of seeing what kind of impacts that this will have, but truly measuring impacts cannot take place for another year, 2-3 years, as we are still in the pandemic. Despite hopeful signs with the vaccination and all, but We don't know where this is going, and I won't even begin to go into that discussion. And those impacts will continue to evolve as time goes along. But we do continue to see population growth in the county and the region is 1.36%. Much of it coming from net migration, meaning it's not just birth rate, internal birth rate, but it is from those that are from other parts of the country, if not as aggressively from other parts of the world, Latin America and Europe being the previous examples. But needless to say, the biggest impact on the sectors that we're seeing are, of course, on retail, industrial, and commercial sectors. There's tremendous turmoil in trying to determine what's going to happen, what is happening, and trying to manage that, as well as hotels and hospitality is another area. Housing is the key as a driver for downtown. That is very clear from the data that we have looked at, and that housing is going to be critical to the success of any downtown plan for Opalocka's future. We know that the housing market is resilient, there's steady growth. We see that in the documentary stamp tax revenues. And of course, they're indicating increasing values, and new construction that's been permitted has been undertaken, and other new projects as well. Many of you in our virtual room certainly are part of that, as being part of that new construction stage. Jared, next slide. The home ownership values are projected to continue to rise in Miami-Dade, and right now current projections show that single family homes, detached homes, that the median home ownership value within less than 4 years will be over $450,000, which is obviously very high. And from a cost burden perspective, we even, as we lead the nation in cost burden renters, which I'll discuss momentarily, but we're also very high in terms of cost burden home ownership. That's a function of relatively high cost of family housing, and also relatively low incomes in comparison to hot markets such as Boston, Washington, New York, and California cities. We continue to see strong demand for affordable housing, both rental and home ownership. And I would just to embellish that, we always ultimately someone asked the question, what do you mean by affordable housing? To me, affordable housing targets at less than 80% of area median income. And this slideshow probably should be amended to add that there's strong demand for workforce housing. And from a Miami-Dade perspective, the definition of workforce housing is between 60% AMI to 140% AMI. So there is a strong demand for both rental and workforce housing, both for rental and home ownership. As I indicated, Miami-Dade leads the country along with Broward in terms of cost burden households, those paying more than 30% of gross income for housing. Alas, we're number one in something. Unfortunately, this is a dubious distinction of being number one and being cost burden for rental housing. That continued immigration that I talked about earlier will be a key driver to demand for housing. We do not see, as David indicated earlier, this massive movement out of Miami or the denser urban communities in Miami-Dade County and in the region. We don't see that negative out migration, but we do see continued in migration to the area. Next slide, please. So in doing and not going through the formula, but to spare some time, we did take a look in terms of in breaking it down in terms of the projection, in terms of what market share can, conservatively speaking, can we see that Opalocka, downtown Opalocka could capture, given of land, new zoning. And so we see the estimated demand for rental apartments in Miami-Dade is over 33,000 units. Units under construction right now are approximately 10,000. And in order to achieve balance in the market by 2027, in 6 years, we need an additional 23,000, approximately 23,000 units. Assuming in the past, most new rental development has taken place within the city of Miami versus the rest of Miami-Dade County is between 70–80% to 80% of all new rental development has been in the city of Miami. We see that downtown market, not that it's totally saturated, but that should downtown Miami should grow at a slower pace based on the cost of land, the cost of construction, market saturation. So we conservatively estimate that 50% of the projected new units of new rental units will be in the city of Miami, not at the current pace, around 70%. Therefore, over the next 6 years, we see that there's a balance in terms of demand for the remainder of Miami-Dade for 11,550 units. If Opalocka downtown could capture 10% of Miami-Dade balance, and that's a very conservative estimate, we see a demand for about 1,100 market units over the next 6 years. And additionally, from an affordability perspective, we see a demand for over 900 affordable units over the next 6 years in Opalocka. Next slide, please. And looking at some of the other sectors that potentially could have an impact on downtown, the industrial flexible space market continues to weaken. And although for warehouse space, the pandemic actually may be a boon to a demand for warehouse space. But we don't necessarily, and I think almost anybody on this call would agree, that warehouse space is something that we want to see as a use to create that vibrant downtown that David talked about previously. So that's something that, needless to say, would be discouraged, is looking at warehouse space for downtown Opalocka. But we do also see that right now that Opalocka, the sub-region of Hialeah, Miami Gardens, and Opalocka has the lowest square foot rate for industrial in the county. Retail, tremendous turmoil, tremendous flux taking place in that market. But historically, or at least the recent history that we've seen, is that the vacancy rate in Miami Gardens and Opalocka is relatively low, primarily because of the low cost of rental and also possible uses that may not be able to find home someplace else. But the cost of space is one of the biggest challenges for small business, obviously, particularly retail and restaurants. So Opalocka has done well because of the relatively low price of retail space. However, we're going against the tide in terms of the future of retail, which is certainly in doubt and in flux. Office market that we've seen this rise from 2019 to the middle of last year by 30 basis points. We continue to see that. We'll be updating that this month when new data comes out. And we've seen a steady increase in office vacancy. However, again, prior to the pandemic, the lowest office vacancy rate was in Miami Gardens and Opalocka. So there may be some room for particularly mixed use development in terms of housing and some retail or housing and potential innovative projects that would include flexible office space or flex space for different uses. David, Jared, is that it? Do I have another slide?
No, that is your last slide, Jim.
Okay, I thought I have some memory cells left. That's very great. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think I'm sorry, David, did you have something to add in?
No, I was going to say he has more of those than I do, but never mind. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Well, since I've gone a little bit out of order, I think I'll continue that unless there's any objection, David. And I think what I'd like to be able to do before we look at the opportunity is if we could open this up to those developers that are on the call or others that are on the call. I'm curious to ask the question before we start looking at where could this go or how could it go, is what the current views are outside of this group that's been working together on downtown. And Ms. Hall, would you be able to orchestrate this with others that are on the call and in allowing them to speak up or ask in thoughts they have on the views of downtown Opalocka today?
I would have to coordinate with my IT department to see if they could just bring them in if they're able to raise their hand.
Yes,
Okay.
if the attendees would like to speak, all they have to do is raise their hand, and as Ms. Hall said, IT will be able to bring them on.
So I'm hoping there are lots of folks out there raising their hand.
Okay. Currently looking, if anyone has any question at the moment, please raise your hand, please.
Or just a view.
Yes, I have one for Miss Dolly. For Dolly, they have a question.
All right, Ms. Dolly.
There, okay. My comment is about the historic and unique architecture and ambiance that exists or certainly can exist in Opalocka. This is what makes Opalocka unique from not only any place else in Miami-Dade, but maybe in the world or in the United States anyway. And I'm hoping that that's going to be an important part of creating a desirable place to go.
So I can briefly chime in on that from the staff side. So what we've worked together on is putting together a guideline and ensuring within new developments that some semblance of Moorish architecture is included in all architecture. As we mentioned, we're the largest depository of Moorish architecture in the Western Hemisphere, and that's a claim that we would love to continue. So with new developments that are online, we would like to continue that moving forward. So that's already in the works. And yeah, we're happy to hear that there's definitely interest within the development community to continue that going, and we're doing our best part to keep that within our framework.
Just to add a quick note, and from the consultant standpoint, absolutely. And frankly, we haven't talked about it in part because it is such a visible and wonderfully important part of Opalocka, but because it has received a lot of attention. And I think what we want to bring to note is it's probably going to be more valuable going forward than it has been for the last 20 years, because now we are entering an era where there's lots of natural demand to live in, therefore work and shop in Opalocka. And the Moorish legacy, the living culture that it communicates and is so essential part of, will be of fundamental value in attracting folks. One of the things we did talk about, a lot of folks have talked about, is authenticity. Increasingly, when you talk to folks in the housing market, they don't want to live in, particularly these folks without kids who are coming to, whose decisions are based around lifestyle, not other things. They don't want to live in the same old, same old. They want to live in a place that's unique, that speaks especially to them and who they are and their values.
Are there any other developers on the call that would like to just share some of their views, how they see downtown today, perception of downtown? All right. Well, then let me ask the question. Does anyone else that's on the call from the private side have any key opportunities or challenges you may see ahead as we look towards the redevelopment of downtown Opalocka.
Okay, I do see Stanley, who is an attendee, has a question.
Stanley?
Hello, Stanley.
I believe he's on mute.
Yes, good morning. I lost the internet connection for a few seconds. And so
Okay.
my name is Stanley Rigaud. I'm with Miami-Dade Beacon Council. I've been on and off on the various presentations, so forgive me for not, maybe you guys have addressed this already. But one of the driving elements for a vibrant downtown is for businesses to seek talent. So talent is usually the key economic driver. And I know that Opalocka does not have a university within its jurisdiction, but how do you plan to drive more talent to Opalocka for folks to, and it doesn't have to be university, it could be an innovation center, it could be other ways to drive more of this idea around fostering or cultivating talent within the jurisdiction of Opalocka. So that's one comment. The other thing is, I would say for the young millennial, Gen X, and all of that, how do you take their interest and tie it to the comment around the history of Opalocka in a way that helps them see the value of coming to Opalocka? Those are my comments and questions. Thank you.
Well, I believe from a staff standpoint, I could chime in for the first one. Staff has actually been in communications with a few entities, one of them including the Beacon Council, on seeing about bringing more educational opportunities to the community, knowing that not only do we not have any universities, but we also don't have a middle school or high school, and the highest grades that we have goes up to 5th grade with the elementary school. Being aware of this shows that the residents and the youth of this community don't have a lot of opportunities to find, educational resources and turn that into career opportunities with the lack of career opportunities within this community. So one of the goals of both CRA and Planning Community Development staff is to be able to have those conversations with those entities, with those educational entities, to provide for, those options to be available. With those educational opportunities, we've talked to aviation school about bringing a satellite campus to Opalocka, as well as creating a sort of innovation district, which is to the immediate east of the downtown, which would be a heartbeat of commerce within the area. One of the things we're looking at is focuses on more tech-based industries, more STEM-based industries, e-commerce, things like that. All that would be housed within the immediate vicinity, because as you know, we can build all the residential that we want. However, we don't have the educational and career opportunities available for our residents. How can we create that environment that's self-sustaining? So staff has already been working on those two items to be able to provide that for our residents in lack of having the education and career opportunities. We basically have to go out and create that. And creating that is creating a dialogue with the powers that be to bring that to the city. Ms. Hall.
Jared, may I jump in on that question?
Please do.
In regards to the first question in particular, and it actually lays the groundwork for your second question and potential answers to it. I think that's a part of a lot of our thinking around the future in Opalocka are looking at innovation centers and innovation hub, if you will. We're particularly interested from a number of perspectives. One is that our plan must help meet the needs of the local citizens of Opalocka. It must be respectful of the place and the people that are there currently and how do they benefit. And when we start thinking about small businesses and entrepreneurship, we certainly want to present and create opportunities for the folks that live in Opalocka. And as Clarion just mentioned, in terms of education is critical, absolutely. The other two ingredients, if I may, and that's something we will address in our plan, that's necessary for innovation, particularly homegrown or incumbent entrepreneurs, youthful entrepreneurs, are two issues: capacity and capital. We have education, but then we're going to need very hands-on, direct technical assistance. That may include a notion of a business incubator or a hybrid co-working space. But capacity and education without capital is often meaningless, and it also could be quite disheartening. So coming up with a capital source to provide equity for startups and, very importantly, for early growth stage companies is going to be critical. Fortunately, the Opalocka CDC has a community development financial institution that focuses particularly on minority small businesses. So they are a potential resource and in terms of providing the capital, but it's going to take a lot more than a local CDFI to, and we'll be looking at strategizing about bank partnerships and other resources to provide the capital for that sector in Opalocka.
Hello, Mr. Begg. Hi. Sorry to interrupt you guys. Just for the record, Board Member Burke, he had to leave. And I also have a question from Miss Sarah Cody.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we want to put Ms. Cody in? Hi, Sarah. I feel like saying you're on the air.
Hi, good afternoon. Respectfully through Chairwoman Russell, thank you so much for this program today. And, you know, I want to echo what a lot of people have said. What a tremendous opportunity Opalocka has. Oh, and I'm sorry, I should have mentioned first, I'm the Historic Preservation Chief for Miami-Dade County. So, of course, I think your tremendous opportunity is in your historic building stock. And, you know, to the point about attracting younger people, there was a study put together by a group that's a subset of the National Trust for Historic Preservation called Preservation Green Lab. And the study they put together was called Older, Smaller, Better. And the findings of the study were all about how your historic, older, smaller buildings are really critical to sustainable development in downtown areas. And one of the findings was that the young people are already naturally attracted to these types of environments. And so a couple things that I think are also really big opportunities is your historic preservation program. I know you have a bunch of properties that are listed on the National Register. I would urge the city of Opalocka to just make sure that everything that's on the National Register is also locally designated by your own preservation board, because that's what actually protects the building. So if you're concerned about making sure that the buildings stay and are not demolished, the way to do that is local designation, not the National Register. And then also there is a state statute 196.1961 that is a tax incentive specifically for historic buildings that are operated for commercial or nonprofit uses. And it's already enabled in the state legislation. So if the Opalocka City Commission also adopted this legislation, you would be able to offer the owners of historic commercial properties a pretty nice tax incentive, pretty nice break on their property taxes.
I just want to add a quick note, and thank you. In what you're saying, actually, I think ties directly to the previous question. You know, what is it that's going to draw talent? And I want to just emphasize, it's not, when talent comes to a place, they do bring lots of other jobs for folks who have not gone to college, and how essential it is. Because we have the kind of housing market we are going to have for the next 20 years, we're going to have a multiple the number of people we've had in the past who might be interested in living in Opalocka because of this history. So I think if it has not unlocked investment in the past, that is not that that is not an indicator of trends going forward. It will be a much more powerful attractor for people and investment going forward. And just to sort of tie your question to the previous one, authenticity is a powerful magnet for talent in this day and age. It is scarce and valuable, and Opalocka has a great deal of it. I would observe that most of the downtowns that really came back fastest and most dramatically did so because of historic tax credits in their core, and that attracted a great deal of other investment nearby.
Yeah, if I could just add, we've been working very closely with Ms. Cody for the past couple of years in revamping our historic and environmental preservation board. So we'd like to thank you for your assistance in getting that done. And we actually are preparing our report that hopefully we will be able to submit today. If it don't get there today, it'll get there by Friday. So I can promise you that. With that being said, we did look into what the inventory of historic properties within our CRA. And we were able to determine that right now we presently, I believe, have about 7 structures that are within the CRA. Unfortunately, we've lost, I think, 1 or 2 over the years due to inclement weather, demolition by neglect, and some other issues that have evolved over the years. I know we lost 1 in 2017 due to Hurricane Irma. But we're trying to work very closely with these property owners and hopefully be able to look at other properties to include within that inventory of historic structures.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I think if there's no other questions, we can take a quick look at some of the opportunities we know. And Jim, thank you very much also for bringing out the market numbers again. I think one of the things that's really exciting is that we do see there's a tremendous potential for housing development within the downtown Opalocka area. And one of the things that we worked with staff on and going through the property records and whatnot is really looking to see, can we accommodate this? Can these numbers be realized? Is there the space and the opportunity with the current ownership patterns for potential redevelopment? And one of the things that is really exciting about this project is that there is the concentration of parcels that could be redeveloped, that we see that, as Mr. Delaney mentioned earlier, are areas that have long been targeted, such as barracks. As we look through ownership records, those that are held by investors that really are planning some future longer term repurposing of their properties. And so as we've gone through looking at what are those opportunities, we really focus on 4 different areas, one being private development sites that are currently owned by folks that we assume are in it for the investment purpose or have already expressed an interest in some capacity in the past with the city or the CRA. We know that there are also city-owned properties within the downtown area, as well as some owned by the Community Development Corporation or future plans by them for partnership opportunities. There are also some vacant parking lots, and I shouldn't say vacant, they're parking lots that, while they may be used for limited parking when in demand, they're not the best use of space within our downtown, particularly as we're looking at some of the longer term trends. And that's also specifically included right on Opalocka Boulevard, which is going to be the historic Main Street. It is a historic Main Street. So we're going to look at that. And then also there's some state lands owned within the downtown core. So one of the things that we showed with the CRA board at our last presentation was where we saw some of the potential opportunities for future development. We have the large blue areas, which I think you can see a large part is the barracks, some industrial properties that are either for sale or have expressed some for sale properties, expressed in the past some interest in for sale, as well as some vacant parcels out there. And then we have the CDC parcels. We've got the city-owned property, our state lot, and then the pink being the parking lots. And so one of the things that, well, we won't show at this point, we've been doing on our back end is really then taking these numbers that David has, I'm sorry, not David, but Jim has developed in terms of what can future development look like, and started to model these out and build out what can the future of downtown be with this type of future construction that could be occurring, and ultimately tying that back into the parking and whatnot. So we've got some really exciting things coming forward that we see. But I think one of the questions that we want to have, and ultimately the city will have as a part of this final report that we're going to be working on is really bridging the gap. Is how do we get there? We know now that we have the opportunity in terms of the future demand. We know that the trends that are coming all look very positive for Opalocka's future over the next couple of decades to spur this redevelopment. We know that the space is there. We have the opportunity to physically accommodate this, and we know what the impacts of that housing will be on the redevelopment of downtown Opalocka. So I think what we want to ask, and this is where I'm going to open it back up to others that want to give some input, is that while we can come up and have a list of incentives or programs that can be put into place for those that are developing elsewhere, and if you're on the call, what are you seeing, or what do you need to actually bring investment into Opalocka? What would be something that makes Opalocka kind of cross over into that competitive advantage where this is the place to put your development projects? And I'm curious if there's anyone on the call that has input or thoughts that you'd be interested in sharing with us. And Ms. Hall, I'm going to put you on the hot seat again to manage that.
Right. At the moment, I don't see anyone. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, Mr. Beck, I don't see anyone at the moment, sir, that's raising their hand, so.
Okay. Well, I think that what I'd like to do is, if there's no one else that has other input that they'd like to give us on that, I'm going to say David and Jim and Ebony, if you're on, also if there's other comments you want to make. Otherwise, I think what we can do is really turn this back to you, Mr. Delaney, or entertain any questions if there are folks within the board or staff that want to ask anything.
One quick observation, and this gets back to the parking question because it's a constant one. One of the advantages that Opalocka has, because it has a community development an agency actively managing and proactively working toward making development successful, is the ability to manage shared parking. For example, I was thinking about the Tri-Rail station. We've done a lot of transitory development planning and involved transitory development in recent years. And it's amazing how many of the spaces that commuters need when they leave their cars in the morning are available at night for the folks who live in an apartment building or a condominium building right next to a station. You can basically save about 70% of the parking additional parking you might need to build. And we're going to look for examples of that across downtown, so that as we do get to structured parking, I think as Mr. Gay or Mr. Delane mentioned, we can minimize how much of that very expensive investment we need by sharing the parking we already have in ways that are real, that you can finance around, that would still attract someone to come and live or work or shop in the places that we're seeking to serve.
Yeah, you actually bring up an excellent point, David. One of the things that we did do, and I'm actually looking for it now, I don't see it on my wall. We did do an analysis of, what the parking scenario looks like within our downtown area. I did have a document, which I must have misplaced, which basically looked at what the opportunities were existing as it relates to public on-street parking, and looking at where you had parking being provided either from a private perspective, whether it's parking that could be utilized for private and public under some type of shared analysis. And it's funny that you bring that up, because just recently the Tri-Rail station in Opalocka just recently added additional parking to their station parking count. And I don't know if a lot of people notice or not, but if you park at a Tri-Rail station, it is free. I believe they do somewhat kind of regulate it right now as it relates to when people can park there, and it's during the train operational hours. But that's something that we can possibly enter into a conversation with, and at least maybe at some point in time, maybe some legislation or some type of an agreement can be crafted where there could be a shared parking situation to assist with potential development opportunities within the immediate surrounding areas of the station itself. So that's definitely a point to talk about and consider for future endeavors.
Just as a one more note on that, one of the things we've been spending a lot of time focusing on is what does it cost to own and operate a car in the U.S. today? And it comes out to about $11,000 or $12,000 a year per car. Depends obviously on the age, et cetera, and that doesn't include parking. Now, most households need a car. The real difference comes, do you need one car or two cars? So when you can get Tri-Rail access to a job, that's like getting probably a $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a year subsidy to live near that Tri-Rail station.
Yes.
Well, and I think, David, too, if you don't mind touching you, and I appreciated this when you said the other day, what will that cost savings be when you go to a time in which we are relying on that pushing the button and a car comes to pick us up, or shared vehicles?
Yeah. Yes.
So there's an additional cost that comes in that regard as well. Right. Okay. Perfect.
And I apologize. I have got to drop off for another call. I truly, this has been, it's wonderful that you're giving everyone the opportunity to engage this way. And I wish I could stay around to hear more questions, but Jared will keep us all up to date. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, David.
Well, I think that's the end of the Stantec part of what we have on this. So I'll turn it over with Mr. Gay or Mr. Delaney. You want to continue with this, or again, continue to ask questions if you like?
I believe I'll be picking it up from here. And Jared, we appreciate the presentation. I don't know if there may be other questions related to the presentation that either board members may have or members of the attendees may have. If you do have questions and you are an attendee, please raise your hand so that we can identify you and bring you into the panel for conversation. While those individuals are contemplating a question, if any of the board members, if you have any questions that you'd like to express now, please do so.
I do. Good evening, good afternoon. Sorry about that. Good afternoon, Mr. Gay, board members, and everyone that is sharing on today and through the community relations. My question is, I've seen a few of the presentations, and I would like to know what's the timeline. I see the goal of where we're trying to get to, and what I would like to see is what's that first piece that's going to be, and what's the timeline that we begin to start seeing this process or this global idea come into fruition, because I see it on a global scale, but where are we starting? Where's the start date for some of this or any of this, or a piece, a fraction, so that we, or not just the board, but the community know that this is happening. I hear us doing a lot of talking. I would like to see a little bit of action. And I'm just curious to know have we timeline or time frame some of these ideas? And if we have, what is that very first, and I'm talking about the downtown master plan, what is the first what is that first thing that's going to actually come into fruition that we can say, this is where we're starting and that the plan is actually happening?
Well, I'll chime in. Good afternoon, Board Member Williams. That's a two-part answer. The first one is we need some type of activity to actually start happening in downtown. I say that by saying we need events. We need something active. We need some kind of engaging activity to bring some kind of active participant engaged activity to downtown. That's number one. If we don't do that, then everything we're saying goes out the window because nobody's going to know we did anything. So I know that the CDC has made a presentation on doing a Juneteenth event in June. So that's preliminary what we're looking at. But we've also mentioned, and I know the board, the CRA board has mentioned, you know, they want to do, you all would like to do some more activities to actually bring something to downtown. So that's first. Second of all, we need developers. We can talk about this all we want to, but until we start attracting developers and actually being active, engaging participants and reaching out to these developers, everything that we're saying is going to be the same thing we've been saying for years. I know for this call, we've reached out to a few developers. We have a couple on. However, we need to do more. We can continue having this conversation, but until we get them actually in the door and have these active conversations, that starts from staff, that goes to the board, that goes to the commission. We have to do our part to bring them in to show them Opalocka is a city where we like to develop, we like to help you. This is what we're looking for. These are the type of activities we want to see, and this is how we can help you. And I know that Board Member Davis has mentioned that he would like to have another workshop, which we'll be following up with this forum, discussing incentive packages and economic development activities that we can do to bring that to the table. But that's just it. We need activities and we need to do our part to bring in developers. Until we answer those two questions, we're going to keep in the same cycle that we've been going through for years.
Let me just kind of.
So my question, I just want to ask a question to follow up to your answer. And I hear what you're saying, we need an activity and we need developers. So clearly the developer part will fall on the CRA lap, I'm assuming. I don't know whose lap that falls on. But the activities part, when we say we, who are the we? Is the we the commission? Is the we the CRA board? Who are the we?
The we could be any semblance of the three. It can be the city, it could be the CRA, it could be community partners. The easiest way is for a third party to come in unless the CRA would like to take it up, because another entity that actually has done events is going to be able to put something together and then present it to the CRA board in order for them to make a decision, would they like to support it? And then that would go to the commission to see how, or if the city would like to participate in that activity as well. That's why I mentioned that the CDC has already came to staff to present their event, and we presented it to the chair as a potential event that the CRA can partner on. And that'll be a discussion item for the next CRA meeting to see if we're willing to support. But things like that, you know, we can see how that meshes with the CRA plan and meshes with, you know, how we want to image doing certain activities in our downtown. That way we can put a framework around it to, these are the type of active engagement we'd like to pursue moving forward. And then we give us a framework, you know, down the line of the types of activities we like to do in our downtown. But, you know, that's just to start the conversation.
If I could just add a comment.
Yeah, Mr. Gay wanted to chime in. I wanted to give him an opportunity as the manager to kind of also answer that question for Board Member Williams.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just like to add into, you know, the whole purpose of this exercise is to create a downtown master plan. And, you know, a lot of people kind of view master plans and documents as just a report that's going to sit on someone's desk or it's going to sit on a shelf and gather dust. The opportunities to utilize that plan and pull things out of that plan and make it implementable is really placed upon staff as well as the CRA board. And what we're looking at through this particular exercise is to have a document that we can go and pretty much begin to market to the development community, to those entities that want to do activities within the CRA area or within the downtown area of Opalocka, and say, here's an opportunity. Here's what we would like to see. And it's easier to do when you have a document that you can provide them and say, you know, this is pretty much the recipe of what we like to see for Opalocka. Now, if this is something that coincides with what you would like to see, by all means, let's venture down this road together and see how we can produce this. So the completion of this document, in my opinion, is probably first and foremost in order to have something in place. And even from this particular document, I don't know how many pages it's going to be. There will probably need to be some type of an executive summary or some type of, you know, highlight brochure that we could create to basically pinpoint these are the things that we want to see to occur within the downtown development area and given a time period. We're looking at having this master plan completed by the end of this fiscal year so that we can take it from being just a discussion item to an implementation item. So those are the things that we're looking at doing. Those are the timelines that we've set thus far in order to get this project moving forward, and continue to have these development forums where we can actually give a developer a document and say, this is what we're looking at. This is, and hopefully this is something that you would see where, one, you would like to develop these particular type of things to occur, whether they be activities or actual brick and mortar, and then bringing in the funding resources and the incentive packages to entice them to do this. Developers are basically in the game to make money. So we have to basically prove to them that there's an opportunity here for them to make money and at the same time bring improvements to the city of Opalocka.
Thank you. No, you answered my question. Thank you, Mr. Gay. I just know that a couple of meetings and just to respond to what Mr. Delane said, I know Ms. Russell kind of gave some ideas. I know I gave some ideas of activities. I would just like to know what can, if your office can be of assistance with those particular ideas. I know we talked about a farmer's market. We talked about just things happening, just even out on the outskirts or the outside, a pop-up shop. Those are things that I know were discussed. So if those things, if that's possible, if those things can be, those are some of the small things, then maybe what we could do is work with your office so that we can make those things happen. But there has to be some start to it. And if those ideas are being laid on the laps and there's no start, then who then is the start person, start woman or start man? I don't mind taking that job, but there has to be a start to some of this.
Correct.
Well, Alderman Williams, I will say that community redevelopment staff is ready and waiting. So whenever the board is ready to put something together, we're ready to move full steam ahead. We just need the word.
No problem. Thank you.
And actually, this discussion is pretty much rounding out into the final portion of our agenda, which is basically the city's future. Where do we start? What do we do? And how do we begin to take these components as it relates to the downtown master plan, putting them in place and putting together some form of an implementation plan that will be able to give us projects and programs going forward. So as we move into the further part of the agenda, and Jared and Jim and David gave a an overall envisioning of what we like to see occur within our downtown development. But we need to be, more specific. What are we looking at as it relates to residential development? And they gave some highlights of some of what could be potentially the opportunities or the typing of housing and commercial or mixed use development that can occur within our downtown area. We did an analysis some time ago looking at just some of the vacant properties or underutilized properties within our downtown core area. And our downtown, when it came to properties that could be available, we were looking at basically just around 10 to 11 acres of land. That's including underutilized land, that's including parking lots, that's including vacant lots, and other areas where redevelopment opportunities could exist. So we need to have something that's a little bit more critical to describe what we envision those particular 10 to 11 acres to look like. There was a illustration that was done within the concept plan that looked at one particular site. I know that we proposed some other things relating to the state property and the parking lot that they have, and possibly integrating that into a potential development opportunity. So we need to be a lot more strategic as to how we begin to put some form of a public-private partnership in place. And of course, because this is being initiated through the CRA, this is a CRA development opportunity. The zoning designation, as it stands right now, our downtown area has zoning that's very similar to other portions of the city. And when you want to propose new types of development ideals that may not necessarily reflect what you want to have occur within other portions of the city, the downtown area needs to have its own zoning designation. And this is something that occurs with a lot of municipalities. In a lot of cases, your downtown area is known as your central business district, and there are references for our downtown to be a central business district, but we don't have that particular zoning classification within our code to speak to those particular things occurring, and that will be special and unique to our downtown area. Those are some things that we definitely need to look at doing. And we are looking at doing it as a separate component of this particular exercise, but it needs to be done with the thought process in mind of being contingent, and tangent as it relates to making sure the right information is put together. So when that zoning comes to fruition and it's presented before the CRA board as well as the city commission, everyone has an opportunity to understand it and agree to making it a policy. We've had discussions about Florida Main Street designation, which is something that I believe the city had looked at some point in time, whether that Main Street would be one street in particular, or whether it would be a series of streets. That's something that we would definitely like to look at exploring.
Mr. Gay.
And moving that forward. Yes.
Mr. Gay, as you go through each one of these bullet points, before you go through all of them, some of us are over 60, so we don't lose our train of thought. Can you, after each bullet point, allow the board members or any of the participants to ask you questions as you go?
Absolutely. Please jump in when you have a question. Like I said, we're at the point now where we're introducing some of the ideas and opportunities that we foresee for our downtown area. If you have a question, please jump in.
Okay, so board members, if you have questions, please jump in so that we can have some dialogue. We have about 45 minutes left, and we don't want to, although we appreciate staff, we appreciate you all, but we want you to use most of this time now to listen to the board and the ideas that we have, because I concur with Board Member Williams. We've been doing a lot of talking, and she's only been on this board for a few months. And for those that have been on there for years, we've done a lot of talking. We need to see some action, and I agree with timelines. We need to see some timelines. And some of the things that Mr. Gay and staff have in place that we'll be discussing, but we want to discuss what this board, the CRA board, what we're going to be doing. So I see everyone have their mic open. I see the mayor has his mic open. I see Board Member Davis is to the forefront, and whenever he moves up like that, he's ready to go. So Mr. Gay, Mr. Gay, if you would like, give us some time so we can chime in. Ms. Hall, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to just say for the comment, I actually got a comment from someone in the community. And they just had a comment about just bringing, I guess with marketing, they were saying to attract developers. Her name is Miss Keisha Pelage, and she said a press conference would be good. We could raise awareness, inform them more about the weather storm preparedness, proposal pledge to designated cigarette vape board on properties. And she said, stop cigarette hate. So that was somewhat she kind of threw out there, but I said, okay. So, but I think that the press conference would really be good. That's all I have, Chair.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna, Mr. Gay, if you will allow me, Mr. Gay.
I was just going over the bullet points, but Madam Chair, if you want to go ahead and begin this as a round robin discussion and have everyone interject their particular concerns, by all means.
And because we're pressed for time and we want to make sure that we get some good, get the board members to have, we've been on since 11, and we want to make sure that they have ample time so that we don't have any excuses as, well, we didn't hear from you all, y'all didn't say anything. So I'm going to start with the mayor, and then from the mayor, I'm going to go to Board Member Davis. From Board Member Davis, Board Member Williams. I don't see Board Member Burke camera up, but I see his camera up, but he's not there. So if he's available, we'll go to Board Member Burke, then to Board Member Taylor. So if everybody can take about 2 or 3 minutes and get their point across, and I know Mrs. Hall is taking notes. So Mayor Paget, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman Russell, and much respect to staff for coordinating this event, and also to Stantec and the team. The information that's been provided is eye-opening. I love the fact of the data about Opalocka and the potential that we could have moving forward. So I really appreciate everyone engagement with that. I wanted to, I guess, piggyback on Board Member Williams' remarks in terms of timelines, and wanted to know specifically what legislation, what policy decisions, what allocations we need to start making in our budget so that we can start to move these things forward. I know that the young lady from Miami-Dade County came on and spoke about 2 pieces of legislation. Matter of fact, have they been passed in the city? One was for making protecting local
historic preservation items, historical properties. Yes.
Yeah. So have those 2 been passed in the city already?
We would have to double check the historical information. And she was speaking about having properties or structures designated historically. We know that there are several properties. There's about 27 that are still in existence. Most of them are residential homes that are on the national register, but they may not be on the local register. So that's something that we would need to look at moving forward with. One other thing that we've discussed from a staff perspective is that, yes, we have a series of properties that are designated historic, yet we do not have a historic district, contrary to one of our sign markers that's on Scheherazade that says, "Welcome to Opalocka's historic district." But officially on the books, we do not have a historic district. That's something that we would need to look at moving forward with and pushing legislation to address that as well. And the final piece to that, as it relates to property tax reductions, that is an opportunity that is out there. The county does have legislation in place. We would need to look at opportunities where if the city so chooses to give a bonus reduction of property values for historical properties in return for those properties maintaining their historical status, that's something that we would need to look at addressing as well. And we will be able to bring that forward to you.
Yeah, so that's the thing. What's the timeline for those things? So hopefully we can get them done within the next few months or at the next CRA board meeting. And so that we can start to see some movement. The other thing is that we have discussed as a board allocating funds from the CRA dollars to improve our parks and help with infrastructure. It don't have to be now, but I would definitely love to hear where we are in terms of those projects so that we can see some changes that actually happen. What are those projects? What's the timeline? When are they actually going to be completed? And are any going to be completed this year that's already allocated in actually the CRA budget that we have? And then finally, one thing that I was hearing a lot about all the things going on, but I may have missed this, but I didn't hear anything about how our infrastructure and development of historic City Hall plays a part into development. So if you can speak on the importance of many infrastructure like our roads, streets, stormwater management, and how that plays a part, and also historic preservation in this timeline to make Opalocka attractive to developers. Because I understand like events like the Saturday at I think it's second Saturday in Wynwood with the art gallery, that kind of started the development of Wynwood. So I could see that there was a lot of infrastructure in that area that laid the foundation for that, which we are having troubles with here in Opalocka. So if you can speak more to how these infrastructure projects are playing a part in affecting this timeline for the implementation of this downtown master plan and attracting developers, that'll be helpful. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Paget. Before Mr. Gay or staff answers that question, one thing that I think we need to, Mr. Gay, if you would just, in short, give the CRA is separate and apart from the city. It's a component of the city, but it's supposed to be kept separate. So some projects that the city is involved in, we don't want the CRA to kind of take over those projects from the city, if you kind of know what I mean. The direction that I would like to see the CRA go is that we get our own projects, that yes, they are cohesive, Board Member Paget, they're cohesive with what the city is doing, but it has its own identity. So if we take on a project, I know the historical City Hall is something that's near and dear to your heart, my heart, and the people that spoke today from the outside, they have just as much interest in seeing it flourish as we do. But I want us to, Mr. Gay, just kind of tell us how that process is so that for new board members that, you know, don't have all of the gist of it, sometimes I get myself kind of caught up in the middle too. So how do we make sure that we are working cohesively together, but that the CRA maintains its own identity? Because, you know, that was one of our 99 findings as well, is that the CRA is kept separate and apart from city and city government. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, if I may, is it clarity?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I apologize. May have been when I was speaking about the projects, I was actually, I know that I know we put money in the budget from the CRA, and that's why I'm specifically looking at the CRA for some parks projects.
Yes, yes.
So that's one thing so that's separate apart from the city.
Yes.
And then I guess the thinking was about generally how, because even though we're separate from the city, a lot of the infrastructure, our facilities is used by CRA in the CRA district. Yes. So I was trying to figure out how have staff and everyone been taking that into consideration.
Yes.
When planning out this master plan.
Bring on board. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I understand what you're saying, how we're together, but yet separate, and make sure that we keep the distinctions so that we don't run into problems with our audits and things like that when we're doing projects. So Mr. Gay, if you can do it in short, if not, write us a memo later. Go ahead.
I'll give you the short part as quickly as I can, and then I'll give you a much more involved representation at a later time. But this is the short. The CRA is basically an entity to provide funding through tax increment financing to remove slum and blight. Slum and blight has been described within your CRA redevelopment plan, and it describes what projects and programs and activities that when that plan was written in 2011, what projects, plans, and programs they wanted to address as it relates to removing slum and blight. As a result of that, there are some projects that could be considered a joint venture project or a project where the CRA is providing supplemental funding through the tax increment financing for these particular projects.
Hold it right there, Mr. Gay. Hold it right there. When because that question was brought up with me through the county as to when we're doing joint projects with the city, that we have to make sure that we're not I don't know the right word to use, that we're not taking over projects that the city have already set aside money in their budget or have been funded to do, and now you're doing it through the CRA. So it doesn't look like the CRA is just an arm for the city to do projects that the city has already said that they will be doing. You kind of understand what everybody kind of understands?
I understand what you're saying. I was trying to give you the short version of my answer as quickly as
Okay,
possible.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
The Historic City Hall, it is a project that is described within the CRA plan. It doesn't describe in detail what aspects of the historic preservation are to be done through the CRA versus what to be done through the city. But it describes it to say that the CRA would provide supplemental funding to assist in that. So that is already described within our CRA plan. So that's not something where the CRA is taking over the project. That's something where the CRA is being supplemental and supporting the project. The second one being parks improvements. There are 4 parks that are within the CRA area. We have basically an agreement to, as a part of the parks master plan, which is being developed right now, that a portion of that would be funded through the CRA. That was also described within the CRA redevelopment plan. So that particular aspect is where we're looking at getting more details as it relates to how those improvements or what redevelopment opportunities as it relates to park and recreation can be done. Basically with the parks, we're looking at Ingram, we're looking at Shabundi, we're looking at the Butterfly Park, and we're looking at Kaboom Park. Those are the 4 parks that are within the CRA that can be addressed as a part of the master plan overall. And then if the CRA board would like to look a little bit more in detail and say what type of amenities should be addressed at these particular parks, that's something that you all can address and entertain at the appropriate time. As far as infrastructure is concerned, there's really one area within the CRA area that is in need of major infrastructure improvements. That is the industrial area, the area that we are looking at making more of a technological redevelopment opportunity, which is described within the redevelopment plan. So we have had some discussions with capital improvement and public works to see where there may be opportunities for the CRA to fund infrastructure improvements within that particular area. Not taking over the project, but just saying you may be programmed to do the infrastructure improvements, but you may not have funding for streetscape, beautification, things of those nature. And that's something that's described with it as a project within the CRA, that the CRA can set aside funds to address those particular things. So it's more of a supplemental thing as relates to those particular projects and ideals for those for those particular areas. And those are just some of the areas that I can pretty much speak on and in trying to provide you with a quick answer as much as possible. We can detail it out and provide you with a memo to the entire board explaining.
Okay, Board Member Davis.
Thank you, Chair Russell, and thank you everyone for organizing today's meeting. I just want to reiterate, Mr. Gay, the point of, I guess, commercial and residential impact fees in that program, and speaking to affordable housing within the downtown area. Of course, Opalocka Executive Airport is located, within the enterprise zone, which of course entices developers because of the subsidies and other layers of tax breaks that they receive to develop in the area. My point of concern, Mr. Gay, is related to jobs. As you know, we had entities like Amazon and others that are scheduled to begin shovel-ready projects on that site. And if we can get ahead of kind of leveraging those opportunities to ensure that they provide proper housing, proper jobs, and just pay their due diligence to the community. I know that we have, I guess we talked about the impact fee program where we tend to focus on, I guess, public services such as infrastructure and that sort of thing, and assessing fees. But can we look, I guess, at options to leverage affordable housing opportunities, whether it's on the commercial or residential side? So if a commercial entity comes in like Amazon, just ensuring that they are providing housing for their employees. Because one of the things that we realize is that their employees are going to look to work and relocate close to their jobs, right? So, that could potentially lead to, a situation where communities and different apartment complexes, the demographics begin to change. So, we know because Amazon and other entities, there are opportunities for workforce and affordable housing. So can we, and we heard over and over again today that, you know, the missing piece is housing, because you get the housing, you're gonna get the, you know, you'll have a market for retail and other entities that will ultimately grow your economy. You know, I'm just gonna push housing, and you know, being that the airport isn't in the CRA, but it seems to be the hot ticket item as far as development is concerned, and forward thinking, just looking at the downtown area and the potential for housing opportunities. I would like to see some sort of program that, you know, that speaks to that link, or that included in, you know, whatever is presented to the board, you know, for a vote. Thank you.
Your Board Member Davis, I appreciate your points and your concerns. Incentive packaging and impact fees is definitely something that has to be addressed in some way, shape, or form. As our impact fees exist right now, they only speak to housing or development as it relates to, and especially from a housing perspective, it only speaks to rates as it relates to market rate housing. It does not consider reductions for if you're doing housing for the elderly, or housing for affordable housing, or housing for veterans. And that is legislation that we would like to introduce or amend as it relates to those impact fees, so that we can look at offering impact fees as an incentive to assist in reducing the cost of housing, therefore making it much more affordable for those individuals. As it relates to the airport and the development that's occurring on the airport, we see the cranes in the distance as it relates to development activity occurring on the airport. When Amazon was built, that was over 900,000 square feet of development that occurred, and they had built an additional 300,000, 400,000 square feet of additional warehousing or retail space to be utilized. They have plans to do a phase 2 where they're going to add another 500,000 square feet of warehousing and retail related space. And this is through the Carrie Meek Foundation and the Fondry development. So those plans have already been going through their processes with Miami-Dade County. And we anticipate at some point in time, they will be at a point where they will be breaking ground and having development occur within that. And you're absolutely right. When the jobs are being produced and a location for those jobs to operate from has been identified, the next thing people have a tendency to do is look for the affordable housing that is in close proximity. So we are definitely working in tandem. We've had communications with the leadership with the Carrie Meek Foundation, and we're looking at doing some opportunities because they are also focused on producing housing for those potential jobs that will be developed over a period of time. So we have intentions to continue to work closely with them and to see where there may be opportunities to do some public-private partnerships. Unfortunately, the city or the CRA doesn't own property, so we're pretty much in a position where we're not actually calling the plays per se, but we can be a player as a part of the public-private partnership and creating opportunities as it relates to financing, funding, and supporting those particular developments.
Thank you, Mr. Gay, and that was my kind of point. You know, we do sit in a special place as regulators and local government. For example, we determine zoning and land use and those sort of things, and those are both, well, not really land use, but zoning was one of the items that you recommended, was relooking at our downtown area and maybe setting aside a special designation or central business district, you know, for that area. So So I understand, Mr. Gay. So I look forward to seeing, that being implemented and presented prior to our next CRA workshop, where we will discuss the economic vision and outlook for the city of Opalocka, as well as what perceived developer incentives we would like to put forth to see the sort of development that we would like to see in the future of our great city. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
And just to reiterate and to carry on with what Board Member Davis said, economic development can look different to every community that you're in. So for us, I would like to know from staff's point of view, what does economic development look like to you, so that when we begin to have this conversation about economic development within the CRA, where we're going to go, then we will have an idea as to, okay, this is what staff, this is the eyes, the lens that staff is looking through, so that we could either add to it and build on it, because as a board, we need to have the direction as to what we, along with staff, believes that economic development looks like, what it looks like to us in Opalocka as a CRA. It might look different to others. And when we're talking about Amazon and housing through Board Member Davis, we haven't acquired any land as a CRA as of yet, right, Mr. Gay?
No, we have not.
Okay, so some of these things that we're talking about as far as in the CRA area, it's an area, but we as a CRA really don't own anything within that area as of yet. So in order for us to really put our stamp on it and say, this is what we want, we have to either own that land or have some interest, some invested interest in that land or property or whatever it is. So we need to look at something, Mr. Gay, that we as a CRA, that we could say this belongs to us, so that we can do a partnership. If someone, wants to partner with us, they could deed or will, or however they do the land over to the CRA, so that we can begin to, when we go to the table, have some type of leverage, because we're not, although it's in the CRA, we don't own the zoning. That's through the city. We don't dictate what they can do on the land. Why? Because all of that goes through the city. So the CRA needs to have their own distinction so that they can have some legs and be able to, give some direction as to where they want to go. So those are things that I think that we as a CRA need to look at. And again, I've said it for the last year, we need signs. We need signs. We need something up in the community that says there is a CRA in Opalocka. Like I said, we don't own property right now, but maybe we could do a billboard. We could do some type of advertisement, something to let the community know that there's a CRA in Opalocka, and that we're doing something. That facade program that we're doing, I have not seen one sign on a building on a property that we say we're partnering with. I haven't seen one sign that have gone up that said this project is being funded, partially funded, or something with the CRA. And I want to push that, Mr. Gay. I want to push that. We need to get some type of signage up in the community that says something about the CRA. Even the facade program, I didn't even see the flyers that we could have given out to the community, that when people, even on the billboard that we have when you enter the city on 27th Avenue, there was no advertisement on there about the CRA participating in a facade program, nothing. So I'm pushing this morning. We need to see some type of signage somewhere in this community that says there's a CRA before we give another dollar to anybody to do any projects.
I hear you, Madam Chair.
Board Member Williams.
Thank you, Chairwoman Russell, for that speech. I wholeheartedly agree and back you up on what you just said. Two things. I wanted to go back to my initial response or question. I believe, Mr. Gay, you said that the CRA can subsidize city projects. Did you say? I think I heard you say that.
What I said was that the CRA can provide funding for projects that have been identified within the CRA master plan. And if it coincides with a city project, then they can provide supplemental funding. But
okay,
if it's not described within the CRA master plan, it cannot be done.
So as long as it's not,
the CRA master plan.
I just want to be clear, because I think that's where, because from my understanding, as long as it's not, if it's in the budget or if it's in a grant of the city, it falls on the city and not the CRA. And that's where it cannot mesh, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I just want to be clear on that, because I don't want, any confusion.
It has to be a project that's identified within the CRA master plan to remove some blight. If it's not identified in the project, in the plan, then it cannot be done through the CRA.
Okay. And upon doing my homework, the master plan have been in draft form since 2006, correct?
Which master plan?
Which master plan are you speaking of?
Downtown master plan?
There was a concept plan that was done in 2015.
Okay.
We have not done a downtown master plan. This is our first endeavor of doing that.
Okay, so the CRA, the board itself was 2000. When did the board itself begin?
The CRA board did not start until 2012.
Okay. So no, I'm just trying to get my understanding, because every month I'm hearing the presentations from the, can you tell me the name of the?
Stantec.
I'm not, every time I say it incorrect, Santax?
Yes, Stantec.
Stantec, okay.
Yes.
Okay, the consulting. I just want to make sure that, we're moving into something. I know that Mr. Delane mentioned that we had to, start an activity. At what point do we, and I'm going to put this same activity on the community development office lap again. If we mention, and that activity I mentioned before was a pop-up, a street, shutting the street down to do pop-up shops. What is the next step that your office has to do to make that start, to make that to happen and to go into fruition? Because I just don't want to continue another month of hearing more presentations on the downtown master plan, and I'm not seeing those specific projects that we're talking about. That I know that my very first meeting way back in December, the CRA meeting, I gave an idea of marketing, and that hasn't taken place. So like, at what point is there some type of accountability do we have with the Office of Community Development, so that we can move into and see some work happening, as opposed to continuing more presentations on a global scale? And I understand that those global scales, because if the downtown master plan, I don't even know when that is going to just start, when, any piece of it. But if the goal is to bring bring developers, bring business owners, bring people into Opalocka to want to be business owners, then there has to be something. We have to do something. And if that something is the pop-up shop, then let's just make that happen. But why are we not like working on this project, but we're continuing every single month to hear this global plan, but we're not working on those specific ideas that we're laying out? And I'll say it again, because I just want to make sure this is on record. The same thing that I said way back in December, why don't we have the flags that say, welcome to downtown Opalocka? Like those are simple things. Maybe there can be a budget amendment item inside of the CRA, but those are small things and tangible things. As it's just, there has to be some accountability on the Office of Community Development. And I'm sorry, I sound frustrated right now, but I don't like to waste my time month after month. And I'm seeing these presentations, and as grandiose as they sound, I don't see what we're doing in the city, the great city of Opalocka. And if it takes me to have to go and make calls to make this pop-up shop start, then I'll do that. But for Mr. Delane to say that we, because when he used that word that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, we have to do, no, we don't have to do. The Office of Community Development needs to do, and then we will support that process through what we as a CRA board to make that work. I'm sorry, I'm gonna get off, but it's just a little like, I just don't like, we're in April. It's April. So we gotta get something. Something has to start. I'm done.
Just to chime in, all right, Boardman Williams, I didn't want to say anything to rub it the wrong way to say.
Wait.
Mr. Delane, hold on.
Through the chair.
We appreciate this work that staff does. Let's get that clear. But along with Board Member Williams, along with Mr. Gay, yourself, and all of these board members, we have to find a way to push something forward so that we can see something. That's what everybody is saying, the same thing. Now, how do we do that? The easiest thing to do is to have some type of signage. And we talked about that when we first started the facade program, that we were gonna get some signage. So let's not debate it. Mr. Gay, through you, can Mr. Delane look at where we can get some signage, even if it says, welcome to the city of Opalocka CRA, if the CRA board is gonna be paying for it, okay? But can we start there? We don't want to leave here today without some starting point. So I understand the mayor, board member Davis, board member Williams, board member Burke, I understand. We have some money, we can do something. So Mr. Gay, is it possible that we could start with some signage? Is that possible?
Madam Chair, it is possible, and I have provided my staff with the information in order to get that accomplished.
Okay.
So we will be moving forward with that. We're still running into some permitting hiccups as it relates to those facade projects. Yeah. I believe one is actually getting started this week, if it hasn't started already. So we're still moving through that process.
In the facade program?
This is dealing with the facade program,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to be providing you with an updated report as to where we are with that project. Now, let me just say this in response to a lot of the discussions that you all have presented us with thus far. Please continue to remember and understand that planning and community development, which is also serving as the CRA staff, is a staff of 4 people. I can tell you now, if you want us to do a pop-up, we do not have the capacity in our office to do that.
Okay, hold it.
Along with all the other responsibilities that are going on within our department and the CRA, we do not have the capacity to do that.
Okay.
Now, we have the capacity to assist in that process, but we do not have the capacity to take the lead on it.
Okay, hold that. So what I'm doing is I'm making a note of that so that I'll talk to the manager, because then maybe through the CRA, maybe we need to get additional staff that will assist the CRA in projects that need to be done. So I'll be having a conversation with the manager and see if that's tell him that's the will of the board. If that's the will of the board, is that a way that we can move in that direction so that it doesn't stalemate the work that you all are doing? Because this is one thing that former board member Kelly said before he left. He said that maybe in order to get some of the projects moving that we need to move, we might need to look at the CRA getting a part-time manager or staff person that will handle these projects. So that's an area we'll look at, and I'll definitely talk to the manager about it. And our next board meeting, or even before our board meeting, I'll give an update as to what the manager says so that we could start moving. If there's something that we want to move towards as a board, we can vote on it and we can move towards that. We'll have it at our next meeting so that we don't have to have conversations. And you all know that I don't like for us to look like we're not gelling together. But there are times when if you don't say anything, nothing gets done, okay? So we'll definitely do that. Board Member Williams, we'll work on it. Mr. Gay, you're saying that for the facade program, signage has already been moving forward.
We're moving forward on that, yes.
Okay, so where we're partnering with these businesses to help them, there's going to be some signage so that when the mayor rides by, he can see that this business is being partially funded through the CRA.
That's correct.
And community members. Okay, can you please send us over a copy of what the signage is looking like?
You will get all the information relating to the design of the signage and how it is placed, when it is placed. We'll take a photograph of the business that's having these particular improvements made upon it before and after. So we will provide that information to you.
Because now, Mr. Gay, you know, in the last report that you all gave, it was said that some of those facade programs had already started. So if they've already started, then the signage should have already been up, some type of signage.
You're absolutely correct, Madam Chair. And when I said they had started, in some cases, they had started through design. They had started through going through the permitting process.
Okay.
So they had not actually physically started doing the work on the building itself. So that's something that's still forthcoming.
Okay. So we're leaving here with the understanding that we're moving forward, that we're not stalemate, that we need some more wheels on this bus to keep it rolling, but the bus is moving.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
I
Mayor,
believe the mayor has a point he wants to make.
Yeah, the mayor, and then the time now is 1:59. I have another meeting at 2:15. And I don't know whether Board Member Williams was finished, but I know Board Member Davis, you would like to have some closing as well? Okay, go ahead.
Very quickly, in the discussion with the manager, if we can talk about the different options, whether or not we just need one person as a part-time staff, full-time person, do we need a full-time manager of the CRA, or are there some mix of partnerships with other CRAs or consultants? Like what can we do to shore up? So it would be great if we have some options that we can see the pros and cons and what they cost for us. That's all. Thank you.
Sounds good. That sounds good. Just not one, okay, that sounds really good. Like that idea. Board Member Williams.
No, I didn't have anything, Chairwoman.
Okay, all right, Board Member Davis. We're gonna let you have the closing remarks. Go ahead, preacher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to Mr. Gay, one question, point of concern related to the facade improvement program. So I know that typically the flow of the program is those businesses that were awardees are required to, I guess, front the bill for capital improvements to their businesses. I did actually have an opportunity to talk with some of those businesses, and they expressed, those challenges to me, not being able to, I guess, fulfill the capital requirements up front. I know we're at the end of the meeting and Chair Russell is short on time, but can you just kind of speak to that issue, and if any sort of leeway can be given to those business owners that are experiencing that specific situation?
Yes, through the chair. There has been some concerns expressed to us as staff regarding the facade improvement program, and where through this particular pandemic, there may be some challenges that the property owners are having. Those issues will have to be brought before the CRA board, you as the board members, and you all will have to make a decision whether you would like to consider waiving the property owners' requirements for their particular portion of fulfilling that facade improvement program. We've asked that they basically provide some documentation and some supporting information to address those particular concerns, so that we can bring that information forward to you, and you can make that decision on whether to waive that particular responsibility. That's not something that we as staff can just automatically do. We would have to get approvals from you all in order to make that move forward. And I am aware of at least one, maybe two of the facade improvement project participants where that challenge is in place. And we are going to be preparing the legislation so that we can bring that forward to you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. And that's the sort of feedback, that I think myself and the rest of the board, would like to see, like what challenges are kind of, going on a programmatic level, that we can make the proper policy decisions to move things forward. So thank you, Mr. Gay, for preparing that, and I look forward to seeing that come before the board. Thank you.
That was a great comment, Board Member Davis. We have to think about, we have been going through a pandemic, so a lot of the businesses probably have been going through as well. And if there's something that we as a board can do, Mr. Gay, to make the process easier and to make sure that the initiative is successful, if you just bring those to us, and we'll do whatever we can to assist you, because when the project looks good, everybody looks good. When it's successful, we all are successful, and that's what we're working to do. Thank you so much. I gotta go. Got another meeting to go to, and we've had a good time today. I think we've accomplished a lot. For some, Mr. Gay, sometime I ask questions because I want them to feel comfortable and to, understand the difference between the CRA and the city, so we don't get ourselves into no hot water in trying to move forward, because I think that we all have the same goal in mind, is to make Opalocka a better place to live. And I think that the city commission, along with staff and the manager, I think everybody's doing a great job. Have a long ways to go, but we didn't get here overnight, so we're not gonna get out of here overnight. But I think you and staff, you're doing a great job. had an opportunity to meet and listen to Mr. Delane, and I was very pleased with what I heard and the ideas and things that we as a city have in moving forward. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Stantec and to the community involvement. This is one of the greater workshops that we've had as a CRA.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And we've exhausted the agenda, so if you'd like to adjourn the meeting, we can do so at this time.
Okay, thank you all very much. Y'all have a great day. Meeting adjourned.
Goodbye.